12:05 in the afternoon here on 90.3 FM. And it's Wednesday. That means it's Helping Seniors of Brevard. Joe Steckler is off today, sitting in for Joe Steckler, myself, and Kerry Fink, along with our special guest for today, Bill Johnson, elder law attorney. Hi, Kerry. How are you doing?
Good. Excellent to be here today, and it's a lovely day in the neighborhood if it's not a little bit warm.
Slightly, yeah. That heat index coming in at 101 already.
Well, it's summertime in Florida, right?
That's for sure, yeah. And Bill Johnson is with us. Bill, of course, no stranger to the microphones here at the Helping Seniors of Brevard show. And, you know, Kerry, before we went on the air, Bill and I were talking about the fact that we go way back. Bill is perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, you're maybe one of the oldest guests, not in age for yourself, but as far as being on the show the longest, right?
That is true, yes.
Kind of like one of those reoccurring guests on The Tonight Show. Yeah.
Well, it's really good because, Bill, you've been such a valuable force in helping seniors. I know our topic today is going to be about VA aid and attendance. And one of the things that I know, because I've watched over the years as we've answered the phones for helping seniors, that one of the biggest, I guess, helps that we've been able to be is to introduce callers who are literally at the end of their rope financially to a concept that they're not even aware that is possibly available to them.
That's true. I think VA aid and attendance is probably one of the best kept secrets out there. Not a lot of veterans know that they can be eligible for that. And subsequently, a lot of them, well, I guess a lot of them really think you have to have a service-connected disability to get any help from the VA, and that's simply not true, because the VA aid and attendance program is basically called the VA non-service-connected disability pension program, and subsequently, obviously, that means that you do not have to have a service-connected disability to be eligible. However, it is means-tested.
Gentlemen, if we could, Bill, could you elaborate a little bit more on aid and attendance? What exactly does that mean?
Well, generally, this is where the program gets its nickname as aid and attendance, and that comes from the requirement that you must be in need of the aid and attendance of somebody for your care. And that can be care and help in doing activities of daily living. It could be because you're bedridden. It could be because you're in a nursing home. It could be because you're blind. It could be because you're housebound. So there are a lot of different ways that you can need aid and attendance for your care, and that's where the program has really gotten its nickname.
And since the development of the program through the Veterans Administration, how does one go about looking into this, applying for it? How difficult is it? What do they need to do?
Well, first off, you have to be a veteran or the surviving unremarried widow or widower of a veteran. So there are two categories of people who qualify. Veterans are defined as people who served at least one day during a period of wartime. Now, that doesn't mean you had to be shot at. You could have been, stateside in the Vietnam War, but if you were in the military, you're still eligible. And the dates of wartime are actually established by Congress. So, for example, World War II runs from December 7th, 1941 to December 31st, 1946, which is a little after hostilities actually ended.
Yeah.
Korean Wars, June 27th through 1950 through January 31st of 1958. Vietnam is February 28th, 1961 through May 7th, 1975. However, if you are in country, well, hold on. That was for the people who served in the Republic of Vietnam. Otherwise, it's August 5th, 1961 through May 7th, 1975. So if you were in country prior, there's a different date for those folks. And then the Gulf War is August 2nd, 1990 through some future date in the future.
to be announced.
Yes. And Congress obviously would have to establish that, but that would include all the people in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, as well as the Afghanistan conflict.
Does the aid and attendance benefit then that the person applies for through the VA, does that vary with the rank of the individual who was in the military?
It does not, but the benefit actually varies depending on the current situation of the veteran. So if you are a veteran and you have no dependents, you can get up to $1,881 a month. If you are a veteran with a dependent, it's $2,230. And if you are a surviving widow or widower of a veteran, it's $1,209.
All right, so there is a little bit of a difference there.
And your benefit may vary. The way they calculate what your actual benefit will be is kind of unique. What they do is they look at the household income, and then they subtract from that any medical expenses. And that gives you a concept known as net income. And then they take the benefit amount and subtract the net income from that, and that will give you how much you get from the VA. So, for example, if you had a married couple, they have $5,000 in income, but they only have $1,000 in medical expenses. Their net income is going to be $4,000. You take the $2,230 minus $4,000, they wouldn't get anything from the VA. Now, you take that same couple at $5,000 income, and they have a $4,500 assisted living bill. Now their net income is $500. You take $2,230 minus $500, you come up with $1,730. So they get $1,730. So really, the key here is to get the maximum benefit from the VA, you have to have high out-of-pocket medical expenses. And where do we usually find those? Long-term care.
So
You're paying for care at home, assisted living, or nursing home.
So that long-term care, as you said, Bill Johnson, that really is what is the major parameter on making this happen and making it worthwhile for an individual.
Correct. I had a gentleman who came in my office. Well, let me back up. Most people don't know that every county in Florida has a veteran service team. Ours is located out in Building B at the Government Center in Viera. They are actually county employees, and they work with veterans on applying for benefits, not just aid and attendance, but also disability benefits for service-connected disabilities. They do the applications for free. So there's no sense in coming to me for me to charge you to do an application when you can go out there and get it done for free. Now, that's their job out there, and they help people do that. Part of the application, I can't remember your question, John.
As far as the individual, you're actually on the right track as far as how they go about applying for it.
Right.
And a person, a veteran and or his or her family would go out to Viera in Building B?
Correct. And they can do that. And part of the application process now is they're going to have to divulge income, assets, as well as get a form filled out by a physician showing you meet the medical requirements of the program, and then you go ahead and apply. It goes off about 4 to 5 months later. The VA approves it, and then it gets paid retroactive to the date you applied.
And, of course, you also have to have that ever-famous DD-214.
You do have to have some sort of proof of service. If you do not have the DD-214, it does help to have some other identification that can pinpoint when the person served in the military, and they can use that to recreate some sort of document basically showing when you worked or were in the service. So there is ways you can prove it without the DD-214, but it's a lot easier with the DD 214.
So aid and attendance, and somewhat complicated, but at the same time, the folks, as you said, Bill, out at Vieira in Building B, Bravo, they're the ones who can help work this process through and make it happen.
Correct. Now, in addition to looking at the income, there's also an asset test because the program is means tested. The current asset limit, excluding house and car, is $127,061. That is a little misleading because the way they calculate assets is a lot different than, like, say, Medicaid. The VA calculates assets by what you have on hand, plus they add to it your annual income. So if you had, 70, let's say 80,000 in cash in the bank in CDs or whatever, but you had $50,000 of income, that's 130,000. That would put you over the 127,061 limit. They do, however, allow you to deduct from your income your annual out-of-pocket medical expenses. So in my example, if you had 80,000 in income, 80,000 in assets, 50,000 in income, but say you were paying assisted living facility $4,000 a month, we would subtract out 48,000 for the assisted living, and your asset would be 82,000. So you would qualify. So again, it does help to have large out-of-pocket medical expenses. Now, up until October 18th, or I think it's 18th of last year, you could transfer the assets right before you applied and get approved. They did not have a look-back period like Medicaid did. However, now they do. And as of October of last year, they have a 3-year look-back. Oh. So what that means is when you apply, they can go back 3 years to see if you've given any money away to qualify. And if you have, they add up the value of all those gifts, is what we call them, and they would divide by 2230, which is their maximum benefit rate. And that is the number of months you are ineligible to get benefits from the date of the last gift, which is different than Medicaid. Medicaid is from the date you apply. VA is from the date of the last gift. And you cannot have a disqualification period of over 5 years. They capped it. So
they made some changes here that
big changes.
That is not necessarily favorable towards someone applying. Some hoops that you have to jump through now.
And there's an interesting story. I got called, I don't know, a number of years ago, probably 6 years ago, by the General Accounting Office of Congress. And they had called in to my office and wanted to interview me because I had written an article in a newspaper about things to do with the VA and attendance and kind of some warnings what to watch out for. And they interviewed me and wanted to know more about annuities, the use of annuities and planning for the VA. And kind of what my thoughts were, and I told them kind of what my thoughts were. Put it this way, there's a lot of organizations out there that love to use the word veteran in their name. And a lot of these prey on veterans and don't really tell them how they're doing it. I've run into a multitude of organizations that will do the applications for free because, A, it's against federal law to charge for an application. But then what they were doing is they were getting these people to move the money, and at that time there was no look-back period. So they're getting the people to move the money, and then they would tell them they have to buy an annuity. Well, there was no requirement that anybody had to buy an annuity. And subsequently, of course, they were getting paid on the back end with the commission on the annuity. There are some organizations out there that will do the applications for free, and then they will set up the care for the individual. They don't mention that they are getting paid by these caregiving companies, home health care or homemaker companion care companies. They're getting paid for doing that. So there are a lot of kind of shady business practices that are going on. And like I said, I refer most everybody out to the county.
That seems to be, Bill, the best way to do it. Go to the pros who know, so to speak, out of the county in Vieira, in Building Bravo, and they can walk you through it. They've got all of the various forms that have to be filled out. They know the ins and outs and what is required.
So in Brevard County, the Veterans Service Team is located at 2725 Judge Fran Jameson Way, which is the county building. It's in Building B, Suite 102, and that's out in Vieira. And they do have a phone number. It's 321-633-2012.
Give that number again, Bill, for the boys in the back.
321-633-2012.
We're talking to elder law attorney Bill Johnson, Kerry Fink, and myself, John Harper, as we fill in for Joe Steckler on this edition of Helping Seniors of Brevard on this Wednesday afternoon. Kerry?
So, good question. I wanted to remind the listeners today that on the Helping Seniors website, Dennis Van Noorsdal, who is one of the fellows at the Brevard County Veterans Office, he and Joe have done several shows that are available that have some good general information about the services that they provide. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Bill, is I know we've done over the years, Joe has done a number of television shows where you've covered topics of Medicaid planning. And now what was striking to me is hearing the conversation you and John were having about the changes in the rules. Is there any thought about VA planning now that you take into consideration ethically as opposed to some of the...
That's a great question, because there is. And quite frankly, it is too new. We don't know necessarily what will work and what will not work in the area of VA planning. There are some interesting quirks to this. For example, if your assets, when we total everything up, are under $127,061, you are free to transfer anything.
Really?
Yeah, it does not. The penalty is calculated based on the assets that you transfer over $127,061.
Does that count your primary home?
So let's say I had given $200,000 away, so I'm over, by roughly $73,000, then they would calculate that penalty on that period. So, and obviously, in the calculation of assets, the house and car do not count. So you are free to give away your house and car because they are assets that are below the 127.61.
Wow.
So if a veteran has a house and they're, let's say, going to assisted living, if they sell the house themselves, those assets will now count towards the asset limit and may push them out of getting any help. But if they transfer the house to the kids and then the kids sell the house, not a problem. So it's got some quirks in there.
Yeah.
Right now, in Medicaid world, we do things called personal services contracts, where we don't make it a gift. What we do is we have you hire your kids and pay them for care, which a lot of times, kids are giving up job opportunities, work.
Absolutely.
And this makes a lot of sense, and they're going to take better care of you, frankly, than anybody stranger will. So it's unclear now if those will work in a VA context or not. We've heard things go both ways. Some people said yes, some people have said no. I've listened to some people on the national level who have talked to people at the VA, and They have been told that the VA is working on rules on how to interpret these contracts. So again, it's going to take a lot of people doing things and challenging and getting, rulings on whether or not these certain planning things work for us to get to a point where we know what the tools in the toolbox are to help veterans get these benefits.
At what point would you guide somebody to say that your situation is I guess, developed enough or complicated enough that it makes sense to sit down and start asking those kinds of questions before you just go fill out paperwork and send it in?
That's a great question, too, because a lot of times people just go out and fill out the paperwork, send it in, and they don't realize how the assets are calculated.
Right.
And they have no idea that they think they're going to get benefits in 4 to 5 months, and instead they get a rejection letter.
Yeah.
And it creates a problem. So I would say it's never too early to go ask somebody about this.
I've heard Joe and you talk many times that it's good for somebody to have a sit down, because everybody's situation is different. Bring it to you. You do a free consultation. Just let people say, "Here's my situation." Then you can advise them the correct way to proceed. Maybe
correct. And there's a lot of other attorneys who do what I do, who do offer free consultations, and we can tell them what we think. I've had a couple cases recently where people actually had gone to another veteran service office. Under the VA laws, you can be any organization can be what they call a VSO, and you have to apply through the VA to get that title, or you can be an accredited agent. And the VSO, they thought they were applying for aid and attendance, but they were not. Instead, somebody had made the decision to apply for a service-connected disability. Well, the problem with that is that can get mired for years and going back and forth, and these people need help now. Right. And I understand why the organization did that, because it looked like they could get a bigger pot of money. And when you have a VA service-connected disability, if you are awarded aid and attendance, they simply deduct that from your VA service-connected disability. They don't allow you to double dip. But you got to realize the standards for both of those are much different. It's much easier to get aid and attendance than it is to get a service-connected disability pension. And subsequently, that can create a lot of headache. And for these people, it did.
We're talking to elder law attorney Bill Johnson, Kerry Fink, and myself, John Harper, here on the Wednesday edition of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Joe Steckler is off today, and hopefully Joe will be back on the air with us a week from today on Wednesday. But in the meantime, we'll be here holding down the fort, talking to Bill about some interesting things about the VA, aid and attendance, and other things that will be coming up in our discussion after we check our weather forecast and get some other information on the radio here for you on this Wednesday. Again, it's Helping Seniors of Brevard is what you're listening to on 90.3 FM. I'm John Harper. Stay tuned. We've got more coming up right after the break. 12:34 in the afternoon here on 90.3 FM. You're listening to Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper along with Kerry Fink, and our guest today is elder law attorney Bill Johnson. And gentlemen, before we get back into our discussion, I can't help but think and reminisce on this music that we play as bumpers.
75 years.
Yeah, that's right. Kind of appropriate for the 75th anniversary of D-Day in Normandy that is taking place now and tomorrow. Kind of interesting. A lot of activities taking place also at the Valiant Air Command in Titusville tomorrow. There is a special event, commemoration for the Tycho Bell, which is one of the aircraft that flew in the invasion. In fact, flew 3 times in the invasion of D-Day, and they've got a special event taking place there at the Valiant Air Command starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow and continuing throughout the day. So if you're looking for something to commemorate, not Memorial Day, D-Day, the invasion of Normandy 75 years ago, you might check out the Valiant Air Command located in Titusville, and kind of interesting stuff. But nonetheless, we forge forward, and again, Kerry and I are talking to Bill Johnson, elder law attorney. Kerry?
Yeah, and actually, we're going to jump right back into the conversation about VA aid and attendance. I wanted to take just a moment, to thank some of the sponsors that are really make the work of helping seniors possible. For those of you that may be new to the program, you would understand that Helping Seniors, we're a nonprofit agency, and we operate the county's senior information helpline. And at any time, give us a call at 321-473-7770, 321-473-7770. That's a free call, and it's one that's been used successfully by more than 2,400 families since Joe Steckler founded the Helping Seniors organization in 2011. And the organization has been really good about getting people connected to resources, helping get questions answered. As we were talking before, we get an awful lot of calls from people with financial issues, and they find out VA aid and attendance could very much be part of almost from their point of view, a miraculous solution that they just weren't aware of. But I want to thank some of our sponsors who really make the work possible, because it's the only way that we're able to do the work of helping seniors. It is folks like our guest today, Bill Johnson with William Johnson, Florida Elder Law. And it's also folks like Dr. Lee Sheldon, who is a very noted periodontist with solid bite dental implants. It's folks like the Eye Institute. It's people like Barbara McIntyre, who's an expert in reverse mortgage funding, and there's so many more. We'll hit a few more later, but I want to get right back into the conversation we're having about VA aid and attendance. And again, I want to kind of kick off the conversation by saying, over the years, we've taken so many calls from people, and traditionally, it's women who have survived their spouses who are struggling. They may be trying to make it work on $600 or $700 a month of Social Security income, and they're making choices whether they're going to eat or whether they're going to buy the medicine that's going to keep them alive. And when they get a clue that they didn't even realize that there's a possibility they could get some help in this level, it really is a life changer. So I wanted to, first of all, just kind of lay that on the table first. And then there are things that come into this, like if you are the widow of a person that served, what are your requirements before you can take a look at this?
Well, if you're the widow, remember the number for the aid and attendance drops down to, I believe it's the 1209, $1,209. But that can be a huge difference in whether or not somebody stays at home, or buys a medicine, like you said. So that is a huge benefit. The only requirement is that you not remarry. So you have to be the unremarried widow or widower of a veteran.
Do you still go through all these things that you talk about as far as qualifications?
Yes, it's all the same qualifications. The asset limit's the same whether you're single or married. So it is the same amount of information that they need. And just so everybody knows, here's what they're looking for. They're looking for proof of all current gross monthly income. They need to know all about your assets. They need proof of medical insurance premiums and medical invoices that are not reimbursed. That's your unreimbursed medical expenses. They need, obviously, a copy of your discharge papers, the DD-214 we were talking about. If you are claiming as, obviously, a unremarried widow or widower, they need a copy of your marriage license to show you were married. They also need some sort of medical evidence establishing the current disability, and usually that's a form the physician fills out. If you are claiming because of nursing home or assisted living, then there's a letter that can be provided from those facilities. They also need to know if you're currently receiving any other sort of disability payments, and they need obviously a voided check, so where they know to make the direct deposit. And if you're acting on behalf of somebody, they do have a form you have to fill out where you're acting as the fiduciary. Some veterans have Alzheimer's disease, things like that, and they can't manage their own funds, so somebody has to be appointed as a fiduciary for that person.
But again, Bill, you mentioned in the last half hour an important note, I think, in the fact that the VA now goes back 3 years and checks what your finances have been for the past 3 years, right?
Oh, well, they will go back and look to see if you've transferred any assets for less than fair market value in the 3 years prior. So now it is a 36-month look back. They did change some other rules, too. One of the biggest ones is it used to be if you rented out your house, say, you went into an assisted living and you rented out your house, all of a sudden they would count the value of the house as an asset because it's no longer your homestead. They have since, or at least hinted, that they've done away with that. You could rent it out. The net income from the rental would count as more income to you. However, you will not lose the exemption on the house anymore. So that is a fairly big change, especially for people who are trying to rent out houses to, you don't want to sell the house because all that money will definitely put you over the asset test limit. So, and they also limited, however, the size of the house. It used to be it was kind of unlimited, size, and they've limited that down. I believe it's down to 2 acres. Let me double check that for you.
So that's the size of the property, not necessarily the square footage.
Because some people were having huge, they lived on a huge farm or something like that. And obviously that was a problem for the VA because, the property could be worth millions. So that has now been limited, and they don't count that. It's up to 2 acres. It was 2 acres. So you can have a homestead of up to 2 acres that doesn't count as an asset.
What happens in the case, because I know Joe does a lot of shows on the financial benefit, in some cases, of reverse mortgages and things like that. If somebody has a reverse mortgage against their home, what happens? And they took the mortgage out, and then they found they had this situation, but the money...
Well, generally, with a reverse mortgage, if you move out of the house, it comes due.
Right.
So you're going to get foreclosed on it, or if you don't sell it. So that can create a problem, especially for somebody who's going to assisted living or a nursing home. The other thing is most times they don't count the reverse mortgage as an asset because it's actually a liability.
Right.
When you pull the money out and put it in the bank, that's when it becomes an asset. So if you have one of these, generally speaking, it's much better for you to write checks to things, to pay your car loan or directly from that line of credit to them than it is to take money out lump sum, put it in the bank where it's going to count as an asset and potentially put you over the asset limit.
So really everything that we're talking about increases the likelihood that you probably want to sit down with somebody who has experience in this to help you navigate. Because if you're like me, you're very afraid to do a government form because, number one, you don't want to get it wrong and get in trouble. Number two, you don't want to misdo it even in a minor way, because now it's going to trigger 52 rounds of paperwork back and forth while you try to get the answer correct, that they're looking for.
Correct, and you don't want to go back and forth with the VA. It just goes on and on and on and on. You'd rather get everything right the first time, get approved, and be on your way.
We're talking to elder law attorney William Johnson. Bill is with us, longtime guest here on the Helping Seniors of Brevard program. I'm John Harper. Kerry Fink is here. Bill, what is the phone number where you can be reached at your office?
It is 321-253-1667.
All right, we'll give that number out again here at the end of the hour. Gentlemen, perhaps I or Kerry should have asked this question here at the outset of the program, but we're talking about aid and assistance and all the things about applying for aid and assistance, but what exactly does the aid and assistance go toward? What is it used for? What triggers aid and assistance?
Well, that's a great question, because the VA aid and attendance is a pension program, so you get a check. How you spend it is up to you. And that's one of the great things about this. Unlike Medicaid, you qualify for Medicaid, you get services. So with VA aid and attendance, you're actually getting cash. And, how you spend it's up to you. I would say that with a grain of salt, because if you are if you suffer from Alzheimer's or something and a fiduciary is appointed for you, you will have to open up a fiduciary account, and the VA may have a little say on how the money gets spent. But if you have your wits about you and the money comes in, it's up to you to spend it how you see fit. So there is no requirement that it actually be spent on your care. But remember, you're going to have high out-of-pocket medical expenses to qualify for the program to begin with. So it's more than likely that's what it's going to be spent on, or to make up the money that was spent on it.
Once, Bill, you're on the aid and attendance program, do you have to report back to the VA as far as how that money is spent or anything?
You do have to report on an annual basis. So you do have to, for lack of a better word, recertify every year. And they will check your assets, your income.
So you have to keep records.
Correct.
Keep your receipts or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So that is part of the process.
All right. So aid and attendance can be very important, however, very complicated if not having somebody assist in filling out the various forms for aid and attendance with the Veterans Administration, someone such as Bill Johnson, elder law attorney, and it would be worth listeners' time to get a free consultation from Bill to find out if you qualify for the aid and attendance. The many things Bill has mentioned this hour, somewhat complicated. You kind of need somebody to take your hand and guide you through this.
Well, John, I'll give you a perfect example of that. I had a guy come in. He said he moved into this assisted living facility. He said he went out to the county folks, and they told him his income was too high and he would not get any help from the VA. And I said, well, what is your income? And his income was like $3,000 a month. And I said, well, how much are you paying the facility? He was paying them, I think, $4,200 a month.
Wow.
And I could not figure out for the life of me how his income could be high, because his unreimbursed medical expenses exceeded his income, so he should be eligible for the maximum amount. Well, you have to know the right questions to ask. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, I said, okay, at this facility, are you really in the assisted living side, or are you in the independent living side? Mm-hmm. Well, he was in the independent. If you're in independent living, that is not a medical expense. If he was in assisted living, it is a medical expense.
Wow.
So he didn't get to deduct the $4,200, and that put his income over the maximum benefit or rate he would have got, so he didn't get anything, or wouldn't get anything.
Huge difference there.
And he was, by the way, extremely healthy, so I I don't think he would have qualified health-wise to be an assisted
But
living.
yet, as you said, Bill, asking the right question makes the day and night difference in somebody getting the benefit or not getting it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the reasons why over the years I know Joe has done several hundred television shows just in the helping seniors world, and he's done hundreds of shows before all that when he founded the Alzheimer's Foundation and all that. But the main thing is there's a tremendous amount of material that's available on the Helping Seniors website, which is helpingseniors.brevard.org, helpingseniors.brevard.org. You can also access it through the Helping Seniors Facebook page if you're there. And you can access literally hundreds of different half-hour television programs that Joe has done over the years, many with you on all kinds of very important topics.
I was going to say, if you wanted to know more about the VA in attendance, what we talked about, there are shows on that.
Yes.
I know I've done shows on Medicaid, how to
Yes.
qualify for Medicaid to pay for long-term care. So there is a wealth of information and on a whole slew of medical topics.
Absolutely.
And assisted living, nursing home topics. So there is a genuine vault of information at your fingertips if you go there.
That's right. And then the other thing, of course, is you're in virtually almost every month of the Helping Seniors newsletter because there's just so much material to be covered. Last month in the May edition, which you can find also on the website, because everything that Helping Seniors does, we make sure that you can also access it. If you, for example, you enjoyed this radio show today, and you feel like maybe there's somebody in your life who might benefit from this, we archive that as well. You can go to the Helping Seniors website, and you can say, I want to hear that show where Bill Johnson was talking about VA aid and attendance, and you can listen to it, share it with a friend, and together that may help, in your particular situation. Last month you wrote about Florida Homestead as an example. People, the average person like myself, we don't really have that background to understand, and then we could end up making a mistake by jumping instead of asking the right questions first.
Correct. And also the magazine is a wonderful way to get out updated information.
Right. As is the radio.
Correct. Yeah, because some of the shows you may find may be a little dated. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure Joe's done a TV show since October with the folks out at the County Veteran Service Office. But, things change.
Yes.
And if you don't stay up to date on these things, you may be acting under old information.
Yeah, this is sort of, I think today's headline, if we would flash a thing across that says breaking news, I think the breaking news today that we're talking about is this look back period change, because, if you went in there with last year's information, you might walk into just a big mess.
I can tell you the look on people's faces when they came in my office in November, and I said, well, I hate to tell you this, but if you were here a month earlier, we could have done this, but now, because you're here now, we can't get eligibility.
Yeah. Well, just from my perspective, I want to thank you for all the help that you've been in helping seniors, because I know it's always fun when I hear you and Joe talking about different topics, how much we as the audience benefit from hearing just things that you cause us to think about, things that we just wouldn't run into. And I know you stay busy. You're going to be in the Florida State Guardians Association meetings coming up and all sorts of things.
Yes, I'm actually president of the Space Coast chapter of the Florida State Guardianship Association, and my tenure ends this month. And if that was glee you hear in my voice, I will be passing on the baton to the next president.
How long were you in that position?
2 years.
2 years?
Yeah. So, and then I'm also the legislative chair of the elder law section, and that position ends this month. And I was in that position for 4 years. I will be moving to the secretary position. as an officer of the elder law section. So
actively involved, a lot of background to what William Johnson talks about here on the radio with us, and writes in the magazine as well. And good information, Bill, and whether it be on aid and attendance with the VA or any other elder issue, you're the go-to guy.
Yes.
Well, I hope so. I mean, part of the reason we do the radio and write the newspaper articles and the magazine articles is to get information out. There are so many people who are flying blind, and this just happens to be one of those topics that unless you need it, you're kind of blind to it, but when you need it, you really need to learn fast.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the things, we talked before about one of the first primary services that Helping Seniors as a charity provides is the Helping Seniors Information Helpline. But the other thing that Joe has always had us committed to from day one, I mean, this goes back, how long have you been doing radio with Joe, John?
We've been doing this now for over 20 years, Kerry.
20 years.
Yeah.
And Joe has always had this mandate about we have to get information in the hands of people so they can improve and make the best choices in their own aging plan. So the second part of the mission of Helping Seniors is always to get information in the hands of people. And by having the blessing of having folks like you who are really, you see every movement in that part of that wheelhouse and are able to communicate that with us, it's really helped. So when you, as a listener, are looking to access Helping Seniors, you can find us in Senior Scene Magazine. And now it's 12 pages every month in the center of Senior Scene Magazine. We call it the yellow pages because it's got the fluorescent yellow around it. We have in the center of it a senior services directory. It's composed of great businesses around Brevard County who are dedicated to helping seniors. We do the radio show, or Joe does the radio show, every single Wednesday here on 30,000 watt WEJF 90.3, blasting up and down the Space Coast. It's online.
And Treasure Coast.
And Treasure Coast, too, yeah. Right. And then the television shows like we've talked about before. But the whole point is to get information in the hands of folks so that they can make good decisions.
And one more bit of information, Bill, before we say goodbye for today's edition of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Again, we need your phone number.
It is 321-253-1667.
All right, elder law attorney William Johnson, and we thank you, Bill, as always, for being with us. Bill Kerry has been with us, I think, for about 20 years now on the radio.
I was going to say, I met Bill as soon as Joe got the whole organization started, and I remember he said I'd done a lot of work with the Alzheimer's. They called them the Joe's Clubs and all of that. But he said seniors have so many issues that go beyond memory care by itself. And this is great that we're having these conversations because I can't tell you how life-changing somebody calling and getting this information about the VA aid and attendance has impacted so many lives here in Brevard County.
And by the way, if you want more information from Helping Seniors Brevard, that phone number, 321-473-7770. And I think that should about put a cap on today's show. Bill Johnson, as always, thanks for being with us. Kerry Fink, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm John Harper. Don't forget, tomorrow, a special commemoration at the Valiant Air Command in Titusville. And you might want to check that out starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Commemoration for the D-Day invasion 75 years ago. The Tycho Bell, a C-47 that flew in the D-Day invasion, is hangared at the Valiant Air Command. You can go out and see it. It still flies. Take some pictures tomorrow, and it'll be well worth your time to also remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in the D-Day invasion. Thanks so much for being with us here on the Helping Seniors of Brevard program. Joe Steckler, hopefully back again with us next week here, 12 noon to 1 o'clock on WEJF 90.3 FM. Thanks, gentlemen.